Moving on to our more defensive junglers, I wanted to start with Sejuani. Now, I wanted to start with her because she is a really unique champion that has been getting some more play as she has been buffed a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing with her and all the defensive junglers. Mobility, gankability, and survivability. So let's get into those. So I want to start off with her mobility. She has her Q, which is a dash that does knock up enemy champs that are hit by it. The first enemy champ that is hit by it. And it does a lot less damage. Obviously, she's not Vi, she's not flying into 1,000,000 damage. But it's really just a gap closer for her W, which does apply that slow. So as any tank jungler does have problems with survivability, Sedge does struggle early game for that survivability, but later on, after you pick up your Cinder Hulk, after you pick up your Bomby Cinder, the little Sunfire-esque feather thing there, you will start clearing camps relatively easily and with higher health. Her first clear, again, you're a little bit lower. Once you get to that red buff, you'll be alright, but if you start blue, you might see yourself having a little bit of a struggle with maintaining your health. Moving right into her gank ability, obviously with her Q she gap closes, and then with that W she does slow. It's a little skill shot slow, and it does a decent amount of damage for a tank, but the part that it makes her really great is her passive Permafrost on her E. It is great, especially with melee champions. You got a melee support maybe like Braum, you got a melee top laner like Darius. You can dash in there, apply that slow, Darius gets an auto off, you get an auto off, guess what? That stun is active and ready to go. Easy as that. The enemy champion will not know what hit him. All of a sudden you're going to have that stacked stun and it's going to be there. It takes 4 melee auto attacks, but if you land both parts of Sejuani's Q, it applies 2 stacks. So if you land both parts of those, they're slowed. And then maybe, you're ganking a melee lane, they get an auto attack off, you get an auto attack off, boom, that stun is applied. Now, the cool little combo you can do with this is you maybe gank a lane like that, you dash in, knock them up, hit them with the slow, they've got 2 stacks on them, you auto, your laner autos, bam, they're stunned. What can you do now? While they're still stunned, you can stack the stun with your ultimate, Glacial Prison. It basically instantly applies that in a skill shot, it instantly applies that stun in a skill shot. Now, you can't do this the other way, so the combo, again, is applying that E, stunning them with the E, and then throwing that ultimate at them. You cannot do it the other way around because Glacial Prison applies that Permafrost stun active. So you can't stun them with the ultimate and then get 4 autos off and then stun them again. No, you have to do it the other way around, but it makes for a deadly combo. Furthermore, you can always just Q ulti in. Sejuani's ult has a huge range, so if you use that Q to add some more range to it, it's quite a far range. You can really go straight through walls and throw it at people, and if your lanes have enough CC to follow up, like mainly in bot lane, you're going to get a kill, guaranteed, or at least, several summoners. It's a real deadly combo, and I definitely recommend picking her up for that engage tank defensive jungler. Lastly, just to overview, Sejuani has pretty great mobility as well as gank ability. Unfortunately, her first clear, a little bit of a struggle, but after that, really, there's nothing stopping her from being a great jungler, Obviously, tank junglers, defensive junglers, a little bit weaker early on, that's why they're defensive, but as soon as they start tanking up, it's going to be a nightmare for the enemy team to deal with. You're going to be going in there, taking a shitload of damage for your team, and still dealing CC and some damage to the enemy team. So I definitely recommend picking her up, and especially playing her if there's at least 2 to 3 melee champions on your team. Sometimes you have a Sylas mid, a Darius top, and a Braum support. You're really going to want to play her. Every lane can proc your passive. It's great. She's still good even if no one can proc the passive. If you've got a full range team, no problem. That Q ulti combo I talked about, still incredibly strong and incredibly great catch tool and engage tool. Moving on to our last but not least defensive top laner is Rammus. Now, I really love this character. I personally think he's just a little too weak. Obviously, we all know I love playing Ivern. Even weaker than Rammus, to be honest, but I love seeing Rammus being played. Going to do the same thing with him, mobility, gank ability, and survivability. So starting with his mobility, obviously it's right there in his Q. Just like Udyr, he gets a hell of a lot of movement speed with his Q and just kind of trucks straight at somebody, knocking them up when he hits them. That's his really only gap closer. Bit of a long cooldown, but the move speed there is just so much. It's just so fast, and he uses it to just really get around the jungle. Enough said, really, and for his ganks as well. So obviously going right from his mobility to his gank ability. He has great gank ability. Obviously a little faster than Udyr, but he comes to a complete stop once he hits something, and he knocks it up. Now, avoiding those minions is key when it comes to ganking as Rammus, but don't let it stop you from getting your gank off. You don't want to be trying to get around the minions so much that you end up letting the enemy laner get away. But obviously trying to get that knockup off with his Q is great. Now, after you land that Q, what's your next move? You're going to want to taunt them. His E is just a taunt. Point and click taunt makes the enemy attack you. But what's great about it is then you go right into your W. Your W makes you gain bonus armor and magic resist and a lot of it. Now, obviously a little more armor since he is the armordillo. But also some magic resist too. So you roll in, taunt them, throw down your W. You're basically taking no damage, and the enemy is just, rooted there auto-attacking you. Really great for all kinds of ganks. Bot lane, mid lane, top lane. You're just so fast, people have a hard time reacting to it. Moving on to lastly, his sustainability. He still does pretty well with this. Same deal as Sejuani. Once you get that, little cinder there, you're gonna be pretty good when it comes to surviving. Obviously, his first clear, a little bit of a struggle, but again, defensive jungler, that's what happens. But you're really just sitting there waiting for the late game. He's really good against AD heavy teams. Maybe they only have like a Lux middle. Everybody else in their team very heavily AD. Rammus is the way to go. He's able to just have that bonus armor and a little magic resist and just really beat the shit out of people. Again, unfortunately, his clear first time round, not too great, but, definitely could be worse. He is quite safe with that W, so if he does get invaded, you just kind of pop it, run out, use your Q as well to get out of there. So, just to recap with Rammus, again, he's got that great mobility, which makes him really good for gank ability. His power ball just rolling into lanes and knocking people up is just super, super good for those ganks, as well as, he gets in there, taunts the enemy, holds him down. In lower elo, people, again, not warding, not looking at their map. Rammus pops up, it's too late. He's going too fast to be stopped or even flash away from. People will flash. Guess what? You're still rolling at a crazy amount of move speed, and you're just going to roll up to him and catch him. Easy as that. Now, you don't provide really that much damage at all, so if your lanes don't have a lot of damage, you kind of want to stay away from ganking those. Maybe staying away from top lane if you got maybe Malphite or Maokai up there. Mainly prioritizing bot lane as, again, obviously an 80 carry is usually down there, rolling in, making sure they're behind. Your 80 carry is then ahead. So, again, a little weaker early game. Great mobility, great gank ability. Definitely recommend picking him up as that tank jungler you need. Lastly, moving on to our VIP pick, it's Master Yi. Now, if you don't know what this champion does, he's basically just a right-click machine, and he has resets on his Q, which is a very cool ability, Alpha Strike. He dashes around, hits enemies with a lot of damage, and then it's a gap closer, so he's right on top of them, able to auto-attack even more. Now, Master Yi is a little bit interesting just because he is defensive but also aggressive. So what I mean by this is he does a lot of damage, but he doesn't do it in the same way maybe Udyr or Vi does it, with CC involved as well. That is why, getting right into his gank ability, he does gank pretty well with his Alpha Strike. You can walk in and Q, but that being said, unfortunately, he doesn't have very much CC. He has to rely on his laners for that. Now, you might be thinking, why would I play a jungler with very low CC? Moving on to his survivability as a jungler, this is the key part on why I said he's defensive and aggressive. Against some champions, he is aggressive. He can, invade if he wants, fight for those crabs, deal a lot of damage. Things like Amumu, weaker junglers, Ivern. He can fight those guys. Unfortunately, against things like Lee Sin, Evelyn, even Vi and Udyr, he can end up losing those fights if you play it wrong. Now, this is why he's my VIP pick. He also has a pretty decent time clearing the jungle. He will get lower and lower on his first clear, but after that, he's pretty much fine. He really doesn't take too much damage his first clear. With Meditate as well and Red Buff, you should be fine. If you need to get a little extra HP, rather, you can just use that Meditate, gain some health, be all good with that. So, moving on to his mobility, his ultimate, he cannot be slowed for 7 seconds. He gets move speed as well and attack speed as well. It also extends the duration if he gets an assist or kill. So, again, like I said in the intro there, when he gets those kills, when he gets those assists, he just keeps queuing, keeps auto-attacking, flying around, doing a lot of damage in team fights, and that's really about it. You know, his gap close are really good, and then the Meditate as well, making him take reduced damage for just that small amount of cooldown, maybe waiting on that queue. So, Highlander, his ultimate, makes him great in those team fights. He comes in, kind of assassinates maybe a squishier target, and then due to the amount of damage he really does, he can even take on those tanks and start getting them low as well, you know, based off of maybe buying a blade or a rage blade, applying his E, which is bonus true damage, starts hitting you with that. It's just a ton of damage a ton of the time. So moving into why he's my VIP pick and why you should pick Yi. Again, he is a little bit harder because he doesn't have a direct, you know, play style. You have to really adapt to who you're playing against. So if it's somebody that is easier to invade, easier to bully, then yeah, you can do that. But if it's somebody who's a little stronger than you, it's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to have to stay in your jungle and make sure you know where they are as well, so you don't end up getting counter-ganked and dying. Being set behind Z can be very bad. You know, you're supposed to be this can't be slowed, Q resetting and jumping around kind of champion, and if you're dying instantly because you're behind, it's not very good. A lot of right-clicking as well, so again, very difficult to just kind of hold that down and do that, whereas with Vi or Udyr, you run up, you stun, you activate Q. With Udyr, they're going to take a lot of damage. Same with Vi, you Q in, you hit R, done and done. Master Yi, you're going to have to Q, auto-attack, maybe Meditate, auto-attack again, Q again. You know, so it's a lot more complex again. That's usually why these picks are VIPs, because if you feel like you're good with auto-attacking, you feel like you're good with knowing cooldowns and all that, they definitely go for it, and you have to know the matchups as well, so a lot of stuff to take into account, whereas other junglers, a little bit more of a straightforward path. Master Yi can go either way, you know, defensive, aggressive, whatever you need. And just again to go over some stuff with Yi, you know, really recognizing your matchup in the jungle, knowing which lanes have CC, so you're not just running in there queuing and walking away. You want to have lanes that have CC, so that way you can help follow up on those lanes. And really just farming for those important items you need, and that enable him to run in and really just one-shot any squishy, due to the fact that he gets free true damage when he activates his E, his Q does a lot of damage, and he's just really hard to peel off with the ability to not be slowed after level 6. So keep him in mind. If you feel like you can do it, try it out in some normal games. If not, the other aggressive or defensive picks may be more for your style.